Whether you vote for me or not, I have lunch for you in the back.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that you'll all vote for this good bill. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. We have a committee substitute that I would appreciate someone sending up.
All right, Senator Rodriguez sends up the committee substitute to House Bill 166.
And I'll explain the difference. Or maybe I should make the point that I tried to address most of the concerns that I thought some of my friends in the prosecutor community might raise, and so I'm hoping that they'll be supportive of the bill. The House overwhelmingly voted out a much stronger bill, 115 to 28 votes against it. They had multiple sponsors who were Democrats as well as Republicans join office, truly a bipartisan concept with, from their vantage point, a very bipartisan product. Because of some opposition on our side, I worked with various stakeholders who were willing to come to the table, including the presiding judge of the Court of Criminal Appeals, the Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court, to find a compromise concept that removes many of the more controversial aspects of the bill, but still accomplishes the overriding goal of this important legislation, and that is to improve the reliability of the Texas justice system. The committee substitute is modeled after a bill that was voted out of this chamber 28-3 in 2009. And that bill created the Tim Cole Advisory Panel. That panel was successful in undertaking effective recommendations to advance numerous reforms. It was a good idea then, and I think it's still a good idea today. That Tim Cole Advisory Panel did end. So when the bill passed, it was established for a limited period of time. Some of those bills have been enacted, some have not. I'm not positive, my staff will correct me, but I suspect one of the recommendations from that panel was to have Texas adopt a discovery statute. And obviously we did finally pass one on yesterday. It's on the way to the governor's office. Texas has had a total of 117 exonerations. DNA exonerations in Texas amount to 48. That's more than any other state in the country. Now, I make reference to that 117 total exonerations, 48 DNA exonerations to make a case. In many cases, there is no DNA. In fact, the overwhelming cause from my vantage point of most wrongful convictions in the country tend to be mistaken eyewitness identification. With the continuous flow of proven exonerations, we know with absolute certainty that tragic mistakes sometimes occur in our criminal justice system. We do have the best criminal justice system in the world, but it is a government program, and sometimes the government makes a mistake. That's why this committee substitute creates the Texas Justice Commission to review proven wrongful convictions. It will only review proven wrongful convictions. It will not relitigate the case. In fact, you don't have to be a lawyer in all of the categories that are placed on this commission. It will identify the main causes of those convictions and make recommendations to prevent future tragedies from reoccurring in the future. Those recommendations would be made to us. The commission would review convictions of innocent people in much the same way the National Transportation Safety Board investigates major accidents. When a major airplane, train, or space shuttle accident occurs, an in-depth investigation begins within hours to identify the causes and possible remedies to ensure it is not repeated. Not to point an accusative finger, but to see if lessons can be learned from some tragedy. A Justice Commission will provide similar safeguards to ensure justice is served in the state of Texas. We lock up more people than anyone else in this nation in order to ensure that our communities are safe. With that power comes the responsibility to make sure we're locking up only the guilty and protecting the innocent, and continuing to make our justice system as reliable, fair, and effective as possible. I want to state, although it's not in my talking points here, it's not a new concept. There are a number of states around the country who have set up similar commissions. Obviously, the state bar, the lieutenant governor, the governor, the Court of Criminal Appeals, or someone that could do it on their own. But I think that it ought to have the stamp of approval, the credibility that comes from having gone through this legislative process, as is the case with the bill that we voted on in the State Affairs Committee. Senator Patrick, to look at, it was a House bill to look at the judicial selection process in Texas. It's a bill that's moving through the process, passed the House unanimously, set up a blue ribbon committee to look at whether or not we ought to change the way we elect judges. We do that about a host of so many areas. I want to say to my friends in the prosecutor community, I know you have a tough job, and I just want to ask you to try to look beyond the tough job and many of the dangerous people that you have to deal with every day to protect our communities. And think about those few instances where mistakes have been made. Think about the young man who's going to testify about this bill today. What could be wrong with a blue ribbon commission to look at when a mistake has been made? I took the subpoena power out of the House bill. That was a very strong bill. That bill was strong enough to be used where the committee could vote to subpoena any information I have in my office as chair of the Board of Innocence Project. May relate to state business or not. I took it out. It's not in there. I tried to take out everything I thought that you all would complain about. I opened my door, the doors of my office with this bill, as I hope I have done with the Michael Martin bill, the AG's DNA capital testing bill, all of these bills that I've worked on through the process. Because I'm not infallible either. I make mistakes. And if there are other things you want to add, I want to do it. But if you just against it, because by God, you the prosecutor. And what you say is what you say. Well, you're right. We probably cannot come to a consensus on it. But I would ask you not to do that. You got a tough job. And we appreciate what prosecutors in this state do. And if Governor Hobby hadn't let me keep my job when I graduated from University of Texas Law School, I suspect that I would have gotten a job in the prosecutor's office. And let me tell you something. I think with the grace of God and a little luck, I'd be the DA in Harris County or some county. Maybe I'd have to move somewhere else. I'm not sure if I could have gotten elected in Harris County. But look, it's a reasonable bill. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions, Senator Patrick?
I do. Senator Patrick?
Just two quick ones. You moved the sunset 17 to 19
Yes, I did.
for a reason?
Hoping I can get some votes.
Well, but you're making it long.
Sunset said it was too early, but they needed more.
Okay, I mean, you're
Yeah.
you're making it longer, not shorter.
Yeah. Sunset said they needed. They requested us to move it.
Okay.
Some of these changes I made, I mentioned the Court of Criminal Appeals and also the Chief Justice, who was here earlier and had to leave. He came out of conference to be at 3. But I got a lot of input from some people around the Capitol who won't publicly say that they were involved. But so when I made that change, it was at the best. It was trying to get them to support.
And have the DAs seen the substitute?
Yeah, they have. Probably about 30, 40 minutes ago.
Yeah.
That's when we got it. So now in terms of the concept, I think that they knew that I was going to scale it back. I asked my friends the prosecutors and some of my friends of the prosecutors, what will you be for? And I did say I am going to water the bill down. Now I'm not going to water it down so much I can't drink it myself. But I clearly made it known I was going to water the bill. So I think conceptually they knew what I was going to do. But I didn't get the final draft from Lynch Council until about an hour or two ago.
I know that the Harris County DA was opposed. Do you know if he's still opposed?
I don't know.
Okay.
I would guess it probably.
I believe we're going to hear from them.
I think they kind of stuck in. I think
they are. Okay. Any other questions, Senator Patrick?
No, not right now.
All right. Senator Rodriguez, you have a question?
Well, Senator Ellis, maybe you watered the bill down so much and now I can't support it. No, I commend you for all the work that you've done in this, and I just wanted to react by asking two questions to your laying out the bill, your testimony here. You said that governments make mistakes, and that's in large part why you're saying we need something like this. Let's not kid around about it. There's individuals that make mistakes, intended and otherwise. And so that's another reason why, yeah, government makes mistakes, so we need something like this for that, but also we need it because there's individuals that make mistakes, and that happens, we know, every day. I was a prosecutor for 17 years, and the tenet that I recall the most is the job of the prosecutor is to see that justice is done. So the question I have for you is, for those who think that this commission is not necessary because it's just more government and too much government, can we have too much government to ensure that justice is done?
Senator, I try to make sure that I don't paint all prosecutors with the same brush. So like we would resent it. People do paint all politicians with the same brush, but we resent it. You know, when I'm somewhere and somebody says, those politicians, you know, then they recognize. They say, oh, but Rodriguez, Patrick, Huffman, not included. And I try to make sure that we don't do that. But look, sometimes the mistakes might be institutional. Senator Patrick and I were talking about a good bill that he had the other day that in some ways philosophically I'm for. He knows what I'm talking about. Now, really,
he killed him. He is so smooth. It's a good bill that I killed the other day.
When our police department asked me to carry the very same bill, they made the mistake of saying to me, DNA testing bill, that you voted for, by the way. You remember he sent you to lean on me. Mm-hmm. They made the mistake of saying to me, "Oh, Senator, this is so you can help it. We can help you exonerate more people." And I was saying, yeah, that's exactly what you're interested in doing. Why don't we just get everybody's DNA when we're born? You know what I mean? We know where we are. But there has to be some balance. There ought to be a way to ask probative questions. And when that Cole Commission was set up, it started out essentially being this ongoing bill, by the way. We passed a version of this bill out of the Senate one time before, called an Innocence Commission. Some people got caught up on this phrase, Innocence Commission. What do you call it now, Brandon? Well, no, the Texas, what do you call it? What's the term I use?
Exoneration.
Exoneration. Look, I've gone, you'd be amazed, and I don't know why the word innocence has become such a bad thing, but I don't want to paint them all with the same brush, Senator Rodriguez, but they have a tough job, and we can improve what we do in our criminal justice system.
Thank you very much for that, and I think it's pretty clear he's a lot smoother than I am, that's for sure.
Thank you, Senator Rodriguez.
Most of us. My fourth question,
ahead. Yes,
very quickly. If you were to pass this bill, you've taken the subpoena power out, are you committing to the Senate that you would not change the bill in conference?
I will. I do commit that.
So it would be the exact bill.
It would be the exact bill, Senator. Now, you know, obviously there are two chambers, and if somebody over there, if something in drafting, you know, look, today somebody was out, I don't even want to say in public, where this entity was saying we ought to have 2. This was saying we ought to have 3. But if it's anything substantive, I make that clear to Representative McClendon, who was here earlier. I could not. I think the argument could be made about the original bill that you're setting up a system where you would relitigate because you gave it subpoena power. I don't really think that's necessary. I can't remember since I've been in the Senate a committee ever exercising its subpoena power. If so, I don't remember it. If so, maybe once, if it ever happened. It's amazing when it's transparent and you ask for it. I think it was Senator Hinojosa who had the Forensic Science Commission, which was an idea that came out of the Innocence Project that I work with. And his bill passed instead of my bill, and I thought it should have had subpoena power. When you ask for it, you get it. And I look back and think of how I was angry over the wrong thing. So I think this is a substantive, it is a strong bill. It's just a way of creating a dialogue. And I want to stress not to point the finger. But to see, if there's a problem with indigent defense, if there's needing to record interrogations, there ought to be a discussion about that. That's a lot of people that have been wrongfully convicted in Texas we know about. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ellis, I have some questions of you. As you know, I've been very opposed to this concept, and even looking at your committee substitute, I continue to be so. For lots of reasons, not that I don't completely support the concept that we need to look carefully at the situation of the exonerees who I've heard y'all testify several times, and of course they have very tragic stories. And I think that Texas has done a really good job to try in our own way to do what we can to compensate the exonerees for the injustice that was put upon them. And we've been, I think, very generous, and I believe I've been told that Texas has led the way in the nation on relief for exonerees, whether it be through lump sum compensation, health insurance. I have a long list here of things that we have done to try to compensate the exonerees, which is a good thing. I also think it's extremely important that we made the reforms in the criminal justice system that needed to be made to address what went wrong when the wrongful convictions. I think it's important that this is publicly stated. And it started in 2001 when you had SB 7, Senator Ellis, you passed the Fair Defense Act. It created what is now the Indigent Defense Commission that was signed into law, and it really changed the way that indigent counsel was, what their qualifications were, how they were assigned. I was a judge then, and there was a major difference, and I'm sure that prosecutors here would agree with me, a major difference in the quality and in the way that indigent defendants received counsel. Also in 01, SB 3 by Duncan created Chapter 64 of the Code of Criminal Procedure that authorized and provided rules for post-conviction DNA testing. It required evidence containing biological material to be preserved for future DNA testing. In 2003, House Bill 2703 required for forensic labs and lab technicians to be accredited by DPS in order for the results to be admissible at trial. House Bill 1011 expanded post-conviction DNA testing available under the Code of Criminal Procedure. In 2005, House Bill 1068 by Whitmire created the Texas Forensic Science Commission to investigate complaints that allege professional negligence or misconduct by a laboratory, facility, or entity. It granted the director of DPS greater authority over the accreditation of crime labs. That's the same year also that law school innocence projects were developed. And the mission was developed, and we know now that UT, U of H, Texas Tech, and Texas Southern schools all participate in these projects. In 07, House Bill 681 by Hochberg further expanded the Code of Criminal Procedure to permit eligibility for post-conviction DNA to those who confessed or pled guilty to an offense. The bill also allowed any DPS-accredited forensic crime lab to conduct post-conviction DNA testing. SB 909 by Whitmire created the Criminal Justice Legislative Oversight Committee to provide objective research and analysis to help guide state criminal justice policy making. 2008, the Court of Criminal Appeals Judge Barbara Hervey created the Texas Criminal Justice Integrity Unit to review the strengths and weaknesses of the Texas criminal justice system and to bring about meaningful reform through education, training, and legislative recommendations. And this unit is still in existence. It conducts research and training on various issues related to exoneration. In 2009, House Bill 498 by Advisory Panel on Wrongful Convictions to investigate thoroughly post-convictions and exonerations to ascertain errors and defects in the criminal justice procedure used to prosecute cases, identify errors and defects in the system. In August 2010, the advisory panel submitted its report and research to the Texas Task Force on Indigent Defense for publication. The advisory panel specifically addressed eyewitness ID procedures, recording of custodial interrogations, open discovery policies, post-conviction procedures, and the feasibility of creating this an Innocence Commission. It specifically recommended against creating a permanent Innocence Commission and instead suggested the legislature fund a statewide coordinator for the law school Innocence projects, which was done and is currently in effect. House Bill 1813 increased the penalty for tampering with or altering a crime lab report to a third-degree felony. Senate Bill 1681 by Hinojosa required corroboration of any testimony from a jailhouse snitch, someone confined in a facility to whom a defendant made a statement while in custody. House Bill 3594 by McClendon required DPS to store evidence containing biological material that existed from certain cases in the smaller counties, less than 100,000. In 2001, Senate Bill 122 by U. Senator Ellis, if a motion for post-conviction DNA testing is granted if the biological evidence was not previously tested or the biological evidence was previously tested but can be subjected to newer testing techniques that provide a reasonable likelihood that the results will be more accurate and probative than the older results. It required the court to order any unidentified DNA profile discovered during post-conviction DNA testing to be compared with the CODIS database. House Bill 215 by Gallego required law enforcement agencies to adopt a detailed written policy for photo and live lineup ID procedures. House Bill 1754 by Gallego made multiple changes to indigent defense, including renaming the Indigent Defense Commission, expanding Public Defender's Office, authorizing manage assigned counsel programs, and more. SB 1616 by West extended the time for which evidence containing biological material must be preserved and required DPS to adopt standards and rules for collection. These were put into effect and currently in effect. In 2013, pending legislation, one of the most important bills is your discovery bill, which you said is on the way to the governor's desk yesterday, which is major legislation. SB 110 by West repeals this section that a person has been wrongfully convicted has 3 years to file an application with the comptroller to get compensation. We had SB 825 by Whitmire provides that a 4-year statute of limitations of the state bar grievance process did not begin to toll until the wrongfully convicted person is released from prison. SB 1292 by U. Senator Ellis requires the state to perform all DNA testing of biological evidence prior to trial, any capital offense where the state is seeking the death penalty. There was the discovery reform, which I mentioned. House Bill 1487 by Carter requires prosecutors to receive annual training on Brady issues. That's my bill. It's actually heard in jurisprudence today. Someone laid it out for me since I was here. And House Bill 2090 by Canales requires a written confession of being a language the suspect can read and understand. Again, these are just a few that I was able to pick out. Anyone who's listening to this could not argue against that we have not made significant reforms in criminal justice in response to what happened to some of these men right here on the front row. We do not need yet another layer of a commission to go through and look through this. Once again, we have a responsibility as legislatures, as policymakers, to address the concerns that have been brought to us. And we have done a real good job of doing that. I can't speak for the prosecutors who are out here. They're going to speak for themselves. But I think that I can say, as a former prosecutor, as a former judge, that the system has to be fixed from within. And we have to come up with these reforms, and we have to, work through the process. But I strongly oppose creating yet another commission to second guess once again what has been done. The exonerees were exonerated because the system worked through the appellate process and through the appeals process. I also have just a question for you, because though you say you removed the subpoena power, I'm looking at this language, and to me it sounds like you still have subpoena power. You may not call it a subpoena, but you say under, let's see, subsection...
Which page is it?
It's on page 6. It says, the commission may request that an entity of the state government or of a political subdivision provide information related to the commission's duties. On the request of the commission, an entity shall provide information to the commission. unless otherwise prohibited from disclosing that information. That sounds like subpoena power to me. You may not call it subpoena, but when an agency is told they shall produce, then they are under the...
I'd be more than happy to make that amendment.
There's nothing you can do to fix this bill for me. Because you're smooth, Senator Ellis, and I respect that, but I'm sorry.
May I respond?
Of course.
I respect you so much.
I know we respect each other.
All day.
I know. You love it on me all the time.
You know what? I'm not going to give up on you.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that.
If I had done that on the Michael Morton Act, we wouldn't have found the consensus that we found that. And I really do believe that. If there are any changes in this bill that you think ought to be made, I'll do it. But I want to just take a deep breath and think about it.
Okay.
Since we've been here on February 11th, a man walked out of the Corsicana jail. He'd been convicted 27, 30 years. If everything that I have done, others have done since 2001, first one you mentioned was Fair Defense Act. If all of the things that we have put in place, going through that litany of maybe 25 bills, make this a fair, perfect, just ideal society, we wouldn't have had that man whose name I can't recall right now walk out of prison.
He was convicted 27 years ago. None of these were in effect. It was a different world 27 years ago.
But just think about it. The argument that you just made, shut down this committee. I mean, we don't need a criminal justice. I could pull a list of all of the enhancements, some of which I passed, other than if I was trying to pass a hate crimes bill, all of a sudden I wasn't law and order then. That enhancement, it took me a decade to pass. You got me? But I mean, seriously, there's nothing wrong with the power of this legislature being behind the stamp of approval. Blue Ribbon Committee that the House passed overwhelmingly, that the Senate would pass, the governor would sign, just like the governor could just set up by executive order to look at problems in our criminal justice. This system wouldn't have the respect that it has in this state and in the eyes of the world if we weren't willing to ask hard questions. And let me tell you, while I'm at it, I'm so glad the Michael Morton Act is on the way to the governor's desk. I give a perfect example of stuff people don't talk about. What would make us so sure that Judge Anderson only made that mistake one time in that one case with Michael Morton? I mean, where is that discussion where somebody would say, prosecutor, look, you got prosecutors on this commission. Chief Justice, somebody from the Indigent Defense Commission. Where's somebody who'd have a discussion when there's another exoneration? I'm just talking about as others come out. I'm not even going back. Person who came out on February 11th, don't touch that one. I'm saying going forward from when this is established. If we find a mistake, most of these mistakes, Senator, with all due respect, they're being found by out-of-state not-for-profit that doesn't get a nickel from the state government. I mean, finally we're raising a little money in Texas, but I mean the group that I work with, I mean they are the, they are the brand that gets most of them out. It's tough. I mean, those thousands of letters that I get from people saying that they've been wrongfully convicted, I don't know what to do with them. It's a tough deal. It's like finding a needle in the haystack. And that's why I just think it's good government. It's common sense. And, the Chief Justice of our Texas Supreme Court has called for this in every one of his state of the judiciary addresses that he has given. You made reference to some entity you said shouldn't do this. Well, I got the presiding judge of the Court of Criminal Appeals who will say, hey, I agree with the concept. I don't want to get in the business of lobbying. Chief Justice left the court, whatever you call it, when they're discussing cases, to come over here to testify. Say, I just ask you, think about it. Try to just don't totally cut it off. Because if you've taken that attitude with me on the Michael Morton Act, I think you feel good about coming around and helping put that. But your initial reaction, with all due respect, what's like your reaction is, on this bill right now. So I'm just saying,
Because
with
of
10
what
days
the bill
left.
looked like, but we
Yeah.
fixed it.
Well, we could fix this one. If that changes you want to make, that's the change the Ledge Council should have put in. It should be made in both places. But, hey, I'm convinced if it's transparent and somebody asks for it, they'll get it. So just don't rule it out, son.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? All right, we're going to open public testimony on House Bill 166. And we have Mr. Corey Session in support of the bill. Mr. Session, are you present? You can come forward and...
You could call them together if you'd like. It might be quicker.
Sure.
It's been a long day.
Okay, let's see. We have Corey Session, Charles, is it Chapman? I'm sorry, Chairman? Chapman, excuse me, sir. But you can come up and
So I think it's
gentlemen.
Madam Chair, Chris Scott, Johnny Lindsay,
Okay.
Chapman, Billy Smith, Claude Simmons,
Okay, they're all together?
and Corey. Yeah.
Okay. Y'all can be,
You can all come up together.
yeah.
And
That's fine,
if I might say, you can sit down. If somebody else has said it, if somebody else has said it, you don't have to say it.
You're
again. Well, come
all
on up.
welcome to talk, or we can have a spokesperson, however you want to do it. You will all have your opportunity, but we can, Mr. Session, would you like to start? Yes.
Good early afternoon. My name's Corey Session. My brother was Tim Cole, our nation's first posthumous DNA exoneree. And I would remind you, Madam Chairman, this is not a Harris County bill. This is a bill that is for the state of Texas. And you, of all people, you should know, being a former judge, former prosecutor, that you made mistakes. But you corrected those mistakes. Josiah Sutton, you presided over that trial. You know that. But you did the right thing later by recommending his release. Nobody did that in my brother's case. Our state motto is the eyes of Texas. The eyes of Texas have been closed to criminal justice reform. My brother's eyes are closed permanently. He's 6 feet under. He ain't ever coming out. And to hear the attitude that you have, to me, is deplorable. Don't box yourself in to refusing to invite change. Okay? I witnessed my mother nearly have a nervous breakdown when a closed-minded prosecutor who had an attitude like yours
Sir, it
put
really
her
is not
son
helpful to make
in
this
jail.
Personal. We
I'm
want
not
to hear
putting, but
well, it
you
just
said,
didn't help them.
okay, let me finish. Stop and let me finish. Let me finish.
Of course, sir. You'll have
Let
your
me finish. This is not a Harris County, and I heard you say the Harris County is not in favor. Well, I can tell you that the Tarrant County prosecutor is in favor. The Dallas County prosecutor is in favor. And so many other prosecutors are in favor.
Yes, sir.
I am sickened. As Senator Ellis said, you might as well disband this committee. That's your job, to figure out what went wrong in this state. It's your job. You don't like it? Go find another one. I'm sorry. I am just pissed off to hear that type of attitude. It's deplorable and despicable. You put a man in jail. You sentenced him. But you made it right. We're trying to make it right for a lot of people. The incarcerated innocent, the nameless, those who don't have a voice. They need a voice. If you got the two highest sitting judges in this state, Sharon Keller and Wallace Jefferson, saying, yes, it's time. It's time. Time is running out. You've got to do something. And I'm sick of this state doing this. I love this state. I wear it on my middle finger, and I give you one guess why. Because I'm sick of the state screwing people, screwing all of these gentlemen. I'm tired of it. I am tired of it.
Thank you, sir.
Keep your mind closed, if you will, but damn it, you need another job.
Thank you, sir. Charles Chapman?
Chapman.
Mr.
Thank
Chapman,
you.
you have 3 minutes. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Senator Huffman, and
Yes,
the rest
sir.
of the committee for having me here. I want to start by agreeing with you. The state of Texas has been wonderful to the exonerees.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, sir.
The policies that have been put in place have been wonderful. But we can always do better. We need to, I'm in support of this because for 27 years I stayed in prison, and my question was why. And if we could get a commission that could answer that question, then I think it would prevent people from ever going through a situation I did. Glory kind of got me upset. Excited a little bit, but I mean, not that he was wrong. I mean, I don't never say, because we could all be wrong. And the exonerations show that we can all make mistakes.
Yes, sir.
There's no perfect people on this earth. And I have to be supportive of this, because even now that I've been out 5 years, I still ask myself why. And not just why what happened to me happened, but why do I still go through the same things, the things that I do today that I am now. So I'm not going to hold you long. I'm just saying that I am supportive of this. I hope you will reconsider. But again, like I say, the state of Texas have been wonderful, and we look for the state of Texas to continue to be as they've been. Thank you, and have a blessed day.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Billy, is it Smith Billy or Billy Smith?
Billy Smith.
Okay, yes, sir.
My name is Billy Smith from Dallas County. I'm in favor of this bill. When I was seeking my freedom and asking anyone who would take the time to listen to me, I wasn't just asking for a listening ear. I was appealing to those on their instinct of what our judicial system terms as reasonable doubt. But I've learned that reasonable doubt is not any doubt, because God has given us all the gift of common sense. I just wanted those that would listen to use that gift of common sense, because someone had to know that I was zealously an advocate for my freedom when I was in prison doing a life sentence. The Tempted Code Exoneration Review Commission for me would be like a motion for discovery that my trial attorney never seemed to ask for. It's been nearly 27 years now, and I still don't know why or how I could have gotten convicted of a crime I did not commit. Facts are the enemy of truth, and I'm sure you're aware of that. And this commission is designed to find out the whys, the hows, the ifs, the ands, the buts, the rather, or the other. And I think that it would be in the best interest not only for exonerees like myself, but future exonerees coming out. There are going to be some more coming out. It hasn't stopped. It's not going to stop yet. I had to find my corner one day of many and pray for my freedom. And today, I come before you with my hand in the air as though I'm coming to you in the classroom, and I'm asking a question: will you help me? Will you help me find out why I was convicted of a crime I did not commit? No one seems to want to let me know that. No one seems to have an idea of why that happened. But we know it happened. I'm a living witness that it happened. I'm here testifying before you today. You know, people don't usually ask for something that they don't have, you know, or something that they don't want. But you see, I want an answer. That's why I'm asking you today to, you know, consider this bill. Because for 27 years now, I've been wanting, this has been my answer. This has been my question. I've had this on my mind, you know, and I deserve an answer because it's something that I've been missing. It would take someone naturally to be in the same shoes that I was in to really understand what I've gone through and what I'm asking for, but it's not unreasonable. You know, reasonable doubt. You know, and should this committee vote for this bill, it would be the voice of what I would think would be reasonable doubt. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Christopher Scott?
Yeah, that'll be me.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
today I'm here for the bill, HB 166. I was one of the guys that had no DNA in this case. I had to have a guy to come back and confess in 2002 for the crime he committed, but I didn't get released until 2009. I spent 7 extra years in prison for a crime I did not commit. I had 5 cops come to my trial and testify in my behalf, saying I couldn't have been the one that committed this crime. You have $5 police officers get on the stand and tell the judge and the prosecutors that this guy is no way possible in the world that this guy could have committed this crime. But I still got found guilty. And not only saying that, this was a capital murder case. So this is either life or death. I had to fight through a death penalty case just to get rewarded an aggravated capital life sentence, which I would have had to do 40 years to come up for parole. Hopefully we can get a panel together to try to override what's going on. Because it's an epidemic, it's a sickness. It done got so bad to where we as a whole had to come together and start our own non-profit organization called House of Renewed Hope to try to go back to prison and investigate cases ourselves. This is how bad it done got. So we got to go back and try to help other people get out of prison that's saying they in prison for crimes they didn't commit. And to say this before I leave, I hate hearing the fact that everybody in prison deserves to be in prison, because that's the wrong fact. Because you're looking at 5 guys up here testified today was in prison for a crime that they did not commit. And maybe if we had a panel together that could oversee and override what's going on, this injustice would not keep happening, because it's not going to stop. Because it keeps happening today. We get letters and letters every day from people that just went to prison, that just got locked up 4 or 5 months ago. It's needed to be happening. And if you can put all other things to the side and vote for this bill, you'll be more blessed than you is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott, for your testimony. Joshua Houston. Sorry.
Johnny Lindsay.
Yeah, we can go ahead and do you. Let me see if I can. You just go ahead and I'll look for the card. Just introduce yourself.
Madam Chairman and board members, I'm in favor of this bill for several reasons. If I may, just real quickly, I was convicted for a rape where there was no evidence. There was no evidence at all. However, the prosecutor elected to convict me on this charge. Matter of fact, I was at work, had a time card, and my employer testified that I was at work. The eyewitness made misidentification, picked someone else as being me as the perpetrator. And even after that, I got the case returned on a technicality. And with no evidence, I was still found convicted. They reversed the case on an ex post facto application of law. And certainly I knew that I wasn't supposed to go to trial again. However, the prosecutors elected to try me a second time with no evidence. And what they did the second time is took away the evidence that I had. So I had no evidence, the state had no evidence. However, I was still found guilty and given an aggravated life sentence. It took 26 years of my life before this was straightened out. And I'll just leave this committee with this saying: where there's no check and no balance, anything could go wrong. And I feel like this commission is imperative to be able to stop the runaway train that we have encountered. And I'm asking this panel, in all due fairness, to give us give those one that's still locked up a fair play on the field. And if nobody looks at this, there's too many exonerations coming out of Texas for somebody to say, no, we don't need to look at this. Yes, we do need to look at this. It's imperative we need to look at this. I went in when I was 30, I was 56 when I got out. What can I do? And I'm just thankful that Texas was generous enough to be able to compensate me, because if had not, my life would have been totally destroyed. And I have dedicated my life to make a difference in the state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your testimony, sir. And I had called you up, right? And you're Mr. Joshua Houston?
Yes, ma'am.
From Texas Impact. You may proceed, sir.
Yes, I'm Joshua Houston. I'm General Counsel to Texas Impact, and we are here in support of House Bill 166. Theologians have a concept called prudence, and it basically means that if there's a possibility that mistakes can happen, that we should prepare for that human imperfection. We assume mistakes with regard to things like air travel, emergency rooms, hospitals. We create boards to review mistakes and to hopefully prevent future error. Pilots and air traffic controllers have the NTSB, for instance. Hospitals have reviews of medical cases, and it's not a thing that they would outsource to medical students, but they would bring in a wide variety of experts in order to look at those things. The same would make sense for criminal justice. Texas Impact is not interested in a bill that is out to examine and second-guess individuals. What we would be very interested in is that the Commission be focused on policies and procedures with the purpose of continual quality improvement in the criminal justice system. What the exonerees experienced is horrible. The greater sin, however, might not be in learning all that we can from their experiences. And that's kind of a silver lining to this very dark cloud. We've been presented with the advent of DNA evidence with a once-in-a-generational opportunity to know with certainty when the criminal justice system has failed. Before DNA, there was simply no way to know for sure or to quantify human error. We now have a rather unique sample of cases where we can scientifically confirm that something went wrong, and we can examine how to modernize our procedures, improve upon our conviction accuracy, and hopefully prevent this from happening to others. That's why we think this bill is helpful, and to have a commission made up of a wide variety of experts to finish what law students and staff attorneys of Innocence projects have started. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
I have a question,
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, if I may. Do you all, as an organization, keep statistics of the makeup, racial, ethnic, minority makeup of exonerees?
I don't know that information. I bet there's somebody here today who can help you, and I can help connect you with somebody who does have that information.
Senator Ellis?
Overwhelmingly African American. Increasingly, there are more Hispanics based on not just Texas, but the national statistics. Overwhelmingly men as well. There have been very few women, but there have been some women.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Lee Hahn. Thank you, Mr. Hahn. You registered in support against the bill.
Opposition.
Yeah, opposition. You may proceed, sir.
My name is Lee Hahn. I'm the elected criminal district attorney from Polk County. I'm currently serving as chairman of the board of TDCAA. I'm testifying in my individual capacity in opposition to this bill. I appreciate, Senator Ellis, all of your constructive remarks and all the efforts that you made both this session and in the last several sessions that have been so progressive in criminal justice reform. My opposition is predicated mainly upon the fact that I believe this is a redundant and duplicative level of government that is not needed at this point in time, given a lot of the progress that we have made and that we are currently making. Many of those were stated by Senator Huffman in her remarks earlier. I would direct the committee specifically to the findings of the Timothy Cole Advisory Panel and the report that they issued back in August of 2010. And this is a direct quote from that final report. Instead of creating an Innocence Commission to perpetuate the study of wrongful convictions, the panel and Innocence projects suggest an approach that would formalize the work currently underway by the various law school Innocence projects. Taken together, the panel believes that these recommendations would provide a novel approach to the study of wrongful convictions that fits the unique association between the state of Texas and the Innocence projects. My point in opposition to this bill is this discussion is currently being had, and efforts are being made to identify the causes of wrongful conviction. We essentially, I would suggest, know what has caused the wrongful conviction in many of these instances. I believe every single one of the gentlemen that we just heard from a few moments ago was a victim of a bad eyewitness identification. One of the recommendations from the Cole Advisory Panel was improvement of eyewitness identification procedures. That was adopted 2 years ago. Another recommendation from that panel was improved discovery procedures in the state of Texas. As you noted, that bill is on its way to the governor as we speak. There was a recommendation for enhanced post-conviction DNA testing. That passed 2 years ago as Senate Bill 122. There was a recommendation that Chapter 11 habeas corpus writs be expanded to allow for changes or claims based on advances in scientific or forensic standards. That bill is pending House approval as Senate Bill 344. So it's not as if the state has remained stagnant or the status quo has just been allowed to exist for the last 25 years. In the last decade or so, Texas has been one of the most progressive states in this country in addressing the problems of wrongful convictions. And I believe the recommendation of the Cole Advisory Panel that we enhance the work of these law school innocence projects is more than adequate to address the problem as it exists. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. Senator Ellis.
Just a couple. Do you know how much funding do the state innocence clinics you make reference to, you know how much they get?
My understanding is that this current budget allows them $100,000 per clinic. They're also allowed to collaborate with the Innocence Project of Texas, who receives grant funding, to my understanding. So there is that work together.
So there, I think, are 4. Is that right? 4 of these innocence clinics
Correct.
Around the state. So you think that all of the problems going forward with possible wrongful convictions in Texas will be resolved by 4 law schools with law students and professors who get $100,000 of the money from, I think, a bill I passed to fund the Fair Defense Project. So the money would go into indigent defense, and we don't use GR. It's a court fee. So you think any problems may come up in the future will be resolved by these fine law students who are working. And what's your budget? Just if you just a rough idea.
For my office, it's around $500,000 a year.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And about how many people you think, just a guess, you probably end up having to convict a year?
We prosecute around anywhere from 800 to 1,000 felony cases a year and about 1,200 misdemeanors.
Okay. Were you for the discovery bill?
I was part of those discussions, yes, sir.
So from the very beginning?
Yes, sir. I met with you at the Capitol one day, I recall.
When I was young, if you'd known me when I got here and I had hair, but as I get older, it's just hard to remember it all. Is there anything in this bill, is there any version of a blue ribbon panel that the legislature could establish that you would be for?
Senator, I would have to agree with Senator Huffman, and for the reasons she stated. I think at this point it is just not necessary in the state of Texas. And you asked me about the work of the law school clinics. Here's the most recent report that they issued in August of this year in the pinchback exoneration. That was a report issued by one of our Innocence projects in collaboration with IPOT, and it identified very succinctly the problems that led to that wrongful conviction. That work is being done, and it is being done effectively in the state, and it is having an impact on policy, as you can see from the numerous pieces of legislation that have been passed over the last several years. So I think the work is being done adequately.
And you think that the legislation that's being passed, like the Morton Act, you think because some of our fine innocence clinics say it's a good idea, or the Cole Commission said it's a good idea, you think we just come over here and wake up and somebody puts it in and get it right out of here?
I think they have contributed constructively to that discussion. Obviously,
I agree.
Sure.
Obviously, they're being facetious, but
yeah.
you know what a battle that was.
Absolutely.
Okay.
A lot of good input.
I have some questions, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I think what you have just said and what Madam Chair said earlier is correct, that there have been initiatives undertaken over a period of time, it's obvious, as you just pointed out, that have improved the process. But my question to you is, this is piecemeal. This is a piecemeal approach to addressing the problem that the gentleman who testified eloquently about exists in this state. As much progress as we may say that Texas has made, it's piecemeal. And if we say that we provide the biggest remuneration for your incarceration, and that's great, how can that in any measure compensate for someone having spent the amount of time that these gentlemen have spent and others? There are people, as one of them said, not using the same word, in the pipeline. So why would the prosecutors of all organizations, an organization which I used to belong to as the El Paso County attorney for 17 years, why would not the association take the lead in ensuring that justice is done by establishing something like what Senator Ellis is proposing to ensure that we will not have, or to minimize at least, the possibility that another person can languish in prison for the amount of time that these folks have spent? Why would the TDCAA not take the lead in this kind of initiative is my question to you.
Senator, first of all, I disagree with your proposition that this is being done in a piecemeal fashion. The Cole Advisory Panel in 2010 made 11 specific recommendations for improvement to the system. By my count, at least 9 of them have either been adopted or about to be adopted by this legislature. I think there has been a very comprehensive approach already undertaken to address these problems that exist within the system. But I also disagree that the prosecutors are being obstructed or that we're not constructively being involved in this dialogue. Nearly every one of these bills that has been passed with some input and support from Texas prosecutors.
What I'm asking is, why don't the prosecutors take the lead in this matter, since we're charged with the responsibility of seeing that justice is done? Yes, I know that you contribute, and I congratulate you and thank you for that in this process, but it seems like it requires a Senator Ellis proposing something so that we can bring the prosecutors on the Morton bill, for example, something that was necessary, opposed, and then ultimately supported to finally get it through. But I'm just saying, why is it that our association does not take the lead in promoting these kinds of initiatives to ensure that justice is done?
Did you get a copy of the report that TDCA issued last August on our own self-analysis on prosecutor misconduct?
Yes, I did.
I had the pleasure of presiding over that committee last year. We met 7 or 8 times, heard from a number of people involved in these wrongful convictions, and took a very candid look at ourselves and how we do our business. And we candidly acknowledged the problems that we felt prosecutors had done to contribute to the wrongful convictions. And that's one of the things that motivated us to become so involved with Senator Ellis in the discovery reform legislation.
Well,
and of course, Senator
and I commend you for that. I did see that. And I think that was a good product. I think that was a good self-evaluation, if you will, analysis. But it just seems to me that when we talk about the testimony that was presented here today and the hundreds of others like that there is just this, it seems like we don't have this sense of urgency to do something and do something now with whatever tool we can garner to address these issues. And this is just one tool. I mean, it's I don't understand it. I go back to my original question to Senator Ellis. Can there be too much government to ensure that justice is done?
You know, my response to that, Senator, is things are being done. A lot of stuff is being done, as Senator Huffman adequately pointed out. That doesn't mean that we should support what we believe to be a bad idea or an unnecessary proposal, and I guess that's where we disagree on this.
Well, I respectfully disagree. I don't think enough is being done. Thank you.
One more quick question.
We have a new chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I probably should have stayed where I was.
Good to see you, Senator.
Glad you're here. I have one more question, Mr. Chairman.
You got it.
Lee, Ms. Hunt, would you take the position that because we've done such a good job on enhancements and crime control in Texas as well, that we don't need any more laws in that space? Nothing else we need to do? Or you just think,
I'd be quite
or
happy
you
if
just
you
think
left
on
the
the
penal code
exoneration
alone.
side, we don't need to do anything else? I'm just trying to, do you take the position, well, just stop on both sides of the scale, or it's just on one side?
I don't think there's ever not a place for constructive dialogue and suggestions for improvement. With that said, I'm more than happy with the current sentencing structure in the state of Texas in my office, and I wish y'all would quit changing it, quite frankly, because we have to relearn the law every 2 years when you do.
So you don't think we ought to do any more enhancements? I just want to make sure we...
My personal perspective, the penal code works fine in my office. So Polk County juries do a real good job meting out justice in our county.
Thank you.
So,
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Brett, Lagan, Bignon. Big on.
I'm here to vote or to proclaim my opposition to 166.
You got it.
However, after Judge Huffman or...
I think your position is well documented here.
Yes, sir. I don't need to flap my gums. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, this gentleman? No questions. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Randall Sims. State your name and who you represent.
My name's Randall Sims. I'm the 47th District Attorney. That's Potter and Armstrong counties up in the Panhandle. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with the chairman and the members of this committee about this issue. And I first want to start off with one wrongful conviction is too many. I'll be the first one to say that. And it's disappointing that the system is made up of human beings where mistakes are going to occur. In regards to that, most of these mistakes are being occurred in regards to eyewitness misidentification, not prosecutorial misconduct. Although there was a study done, and even our review of that wound up that there were probably 6 instances out of 4 million cases where there'd probably been something done by a prosecutor that shouldn't happen. That being said, we kind of tried to split up what all we were going to talk about. I'm going to narrow down mine to just one other thing that concerns the prosecutors. State legislatures in 5 different states have passed an Innocence Commission. Out of those 5 states, 2 have abolished the death penalty and 3 no longer execute inmates. That being said, and in regards to that, there are many of the supporters that have testified previously in regards to this particular bill have been vehement supporters of being anti-death penalty. That causes great concerns for prosecutors in the state of Texas, especially in light of a law review article that was published by some professors from the University of Texas in 2002, in which they basically developed a playbook for how to do away with the death penalty. They said that reforming the current system will not work. And they laid out a playbook of 5 things to do. Number 1 was to get the state to pass something similar to the Innocence Commission that will then, from the inside, being paid by the state, work to abolish the death penalty. That's the first thing on the list of 5. And quite frankly, that's got us scared to death. That being said, we've already had an example of a committee getting off mission. The Texas Forensic Science Commission in 2005 was developed to go into forensic science issues. It didn't last very long before, through the public input and what they needed to look into, it wasn't doing that anymore. It was looking at death penalty cases, and it spent several years looking at questionable death penalty cases. Again, this concern. The other concern is the Innocence Project at the law schools is already handling a lot of the stuff that's in Section 5 of this bill. There's the Texas Forensic Science. They're talking about doing forensic science stuff. The Texas Forensic Science Commission is still in existence and working as of this date still. So lots of things that this bill as drafted now has already been taken care of. And particularly, as I understand the bill, this is now laid out to where you're not going to be looking to find exonerees. you're only going to handle matters that deal with those that have already been shown to be actually innocent. If that's the case of what the purpose is truly going to be, then a bunch of this discussion about looking and helping the system to look and doing all that stuff is really not going to be applicable, especially when by the own language in here, they're citing the first biennium. They're going to do what the 5 criteria, what the Texas, oh my goodness, the previous commission that was set up, the Timothy Cole Innocence Commission did. They're going to go and do the same thing that commission did, which, as Lee pointed out, 9 of the 11 are either already in existence or about to be in existence. And I've had the privilege of working with Senator Ellis and his staff, and quite frankly, many of the things that have happened in the forefront have come about because of you in regards to the criminal justice system. But I do think also that prosecutors have played a role in helping to make a lot of that happen, and I can speak firsthand in regards to 1611 because I spent 20 out of 30 days down here with y'all trying to get that worked out. And we got it worked out. And the only issue, we were always, Senator Rodriguez, we were always in favor of the principle behind what 1611 was. The main issue we wound up with that we had to get resolved was the protection of our victims and our witnesses. And once that got resolved, we had no problems. And with that, I'll conclude and answer any questions anybody might have.
I would just say, if I could, and I have been down in the Finance Conference Committee, but certainly very familiar with this, and I looked at a bunch of good friends on both sides. I would ask you this. First of all, I'll ask you to understand that those that you cited that are against the death penalty that would also cite that they would be for some type of review process, that's not inconsistent with me, that folks that oppose the death penalty as a statement and a practice also would like to see things done properly or reviewed looking for mistakes. So that's entirely consistent. And I would quickly add, there are some of us that are for the death penalty. One of only 2 members still in the legislature that voted for it, still for the death penalty, would think that we ought to consider some process that we grade people, not to indict or charge, but certainly to learn from their experiences. So I think you can separate the two. And all I would ask is, first of all, 95, the House has passed this.
Yes, well, so not in this form.
But let me just keep it in perspective as someone who's got friends on both sides. I've urged, and hours late in terms of the session, 2 weeks from yesterday, I would urge you and your colleagues, and Mr. Hahn and I talked a few days ago, and I know you kind of articulated, there's been a lot of concessions, a lot of movement on behalf of the prosecutors to approve certainly the Martin bills, other concessions that you might have been opposed to in recent times. I mean, now you've actually supported and testified. Here's my concern. Have you considered the fact that you might not pass it this session, but I would suggest to you the movement is in the other direction. It passed the House. If we didn't have the 2/3 rule, which we may not always have, I think it serves the state significantly. Yes. If you didn't have the 2/3 rule, I think this bill would have a real strong possibility of passing. Sarah Huffman and others can disagree with me, but I think I can get to 16 probably. All I'm saying is, this is my urging. Y'all are all doing a good side. Senator Huffman and my friends that are concerned. I just can't imagine why y'all can't sit down. And I urged some of your colleagues to do it, but they said, no, we've done enough this session. Let's let that be absorbed. Well, I don't think that's a very productive position. I think you ought to keep finding a version of the Ellis proposition, some version that you can live with and you actually think would pursue justice and not have us always having this conversation. So does any of that make any sense to you?
Yes, sir, and I understand what you're saying.
I disagree with it. I'm just simply saying is most of the players in this room, elected and not elected, certainly local DAs, everybody's going to be back. And I'm just simply saying is, I just think there's momentum towards passing some form of review process.
I think there's a move in the direction to have that happen at some point. Right now, the things that are listed in that bill are already being handled by other people as we speak. It's
so
already
if they
being
are,
done.
what the hell's the harm? If they're already going to be conducted in other venues or by other agencies, why do you mind another one?
That goes to my second
Another
problem.
level of accountability.
That goes to my second part of the response to you in your first question, and that is that in regards to the last several legislative sessions, lots of very positive things have been done. I witnessed all the things that have already been listed.
Sure.
I would suggest to the committee.
Would you not agree with me partly because of a terrible, terrible tragedy in our criminal justice system?
I agree, and while that was happening in Central Texas, I was working in Potter County, Texas, and we have always had an open file policy. I've never worked in a closed file policy office ever. Okay?
Well, anyway,
and that's developed. But what
I'm just saying is, Lord willing, and the voters, most of us will be back. So whether we conclude today or in the next 10 days, I can't imagine all these well-intended people on both sides can't sit down and find some language that will serve the state and the justice system. And that's my urging, because it ain't going away.
I understand it's not, and part of the reason I'm here testifying against it is I think the changes that have been made have not had a chance to ripen on the tree and see how they're going to develop and work, and I think they deserve the opportunity.
Well, I guess what I'm asking for is commitment with that. In that context, would you keep attempting to find?
Yes, I understand you want us to keep talking. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
And we have. Trust me, we talked a long time on 1611.
I know, but y'all just kind of dug in like we've done enough, so we don't have to do anything else at this stage.
I can say I haven't dug in.
Okay.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, first I want to thank you, Mr. Sims, because you really were helpful with the Michael Martin Act. It's amazing how once the bill passes, first of all, everybody's responsible for it, but the people who vote on it. That's the hell of a thing. You notice that?
And everybody's good with it except for the ones that weren't there.
That's right.
Talking about.
You really were helpful, and there are a lot of my friends in the prosecutors community who were not. And even as the bill went through the process, even if my colleague helped, all three of my colleagues helped a lot, they were still calling. I mean, they had to take a little heat because you know how you all work. If we had to go, now around here, 21 turns into 31 a lot of times. Have been a whole lot of times I voted for some stuff, but I was not number 21. You know, I was number 31. Look, have you looked at this substitute?
I got it handed to me right before.
Randall, I want to stress you, please do. I don't think everybody's going to show up to vote today. Maybe I haven't voted in the committee. I gutted the bill. I watered down the bill. I made the comment if I put any more water, if I watered it down anymore, I couldn't drink it.
I will agree that this bill is much better than the previous version.
The issue of the subpoena power, it should have said may both times, and we'll change that. But look, I just make sure you look at this section here where they determine the agenda by and not more than 10 prominent issues.
In the second biennium,
yes, sir. The Tim Cole Commission was so wonderful. Like the chair said, why would you continue to do it? But look, I want to make this point. When people are tied to the death penalty, there's stereotypes on both sides, by the way. There's some of my colleagues from time to time, when I've asked for their votes on some of these reforms, they'll say, well, Rodney, you just against the death penalty. I say, Senator, I presided over 3 executions. I mean, not a lot of us on the floor when we were President Pro Tem had to preside. 3 times I said, the state will proceed. Even some of my friends at the Innocence Project are shocked when they ask about the death penalty. I said, no, I'm for it. I just like to get the right one. But the stereotype thing, it's almost like anytime somebody's talking about reform, they want to say you're against the death penalty. So does that mean that all the people who are for the death penalty don't want reforms? I wouldn't stereotype. So look, I just hope you read this bill and look at it and just try, Mr. Simpson, not to just dig in.
Well, Brandon and I, before I saw that, Brandon and I were outside in the hall talking about some stuff, so you'll know.
Yeah.
But I'm sure when the Texas Forensic Science Commission got developed, they had no intention of getting anywhere near death penalty cases and being fully involved in just talking about death penalty cases.
Well, they don't look for junk science.
The forensic science, yes.
Yeah.
But they got involved in way more than that. And I'm sure that wasn't the intent when it started, but somehow or another that's where it wound up.
But I hear you slippery slope, but I'm saying if you talk about the Willingham case, you know, I want to go back and re-argue that here. But if it's junk science, there was no intent for forensic science to only look at junk science if it's if it's a misdemeanor. If it's junk, it's junk.
I understand.
Yeah, let's don't go down that path today.
Any other questions?
Well, staff did remind me and put it in the context that things are shifting. You know, I understand Sophronia Thompson actually passed the Sentencing Commission bill.
Pardon me?
I don't know what's going on over in the House. They got 95 Republicans, but it's a little different brand of Republican. Apparently the Tea Party's got some serious concerns about government, and y'all represent government. So it passed over a sentencing commission. They're looking for a Senate sponsor, which would be a permanent 20-member group that would do serious review on your prosecutorial practice. So as your friend, I'm suggesting y'all could do worse than work with Senator Ellis and other colleagues about trying to find a reasonable piece of legislation.
I hear your message, Senator.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm giving you some
Thank
good
you,
advice. Thank you. David Weeks. I should have stayed in my other meeting. I know it.
Mr. Chairman.
David, state your name, who you represent.
My name is David Weeks. I'm the Walker County Criminal District Attorney. I've been there since 1991. I don't think there's anything I can add. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I think Senator Huffman laid out the advances very well and what is being done. I think the Innocence projects need to be supported, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Any questions?
Hey, Dave, would you favor more than that $100,000 that comes out of the indigent defense pot to fund? Would you favor general revenue?
It's not my money. So.
I know, but so would you favor them getting GR?
I don't see a problem with more funding for that. I think boots on the ground are a good thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Justin Wood, like to be shown in opposition. Andrea Morris, Texas backup. Anyone else would like to be heard from in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, you know, the Chief Justice was here earlier. He came out of conference. His assistant is here, and if she would like to, because I guess she needs to be able to decide on that.
Okay. I'll be glad to hear from her. State your name, who you represent.
My name is Jen Cafferty. I'm the General Counsel for the Supreme Court. The Chief sends his apologies that he had to leave, but the court is in conference today. However, he asked that I stay and convey his thoughts on the matter. We don't have any comments on the details in HB 166, but as Senator Ellis mentioned, the Chief Justice has, in his last several State of the Judiciary addresses, including this very session, called for the creation of a commission to investigate each instance of exoneration in our state, identify areas of improvement and ways to prevent future wrongful convictions, and recommend statewide reforms in this area. As he said in this year's address, wrongful convictions leave our citizens vulnerable as actual perpetrators remain free, and they leave us with the distinct impression that we today suffer from a systemic deficit in our collective approach to the way we decide how to administer criminal justice. Chief Justice Jefferson believes that a comprehensive statewide effort, such as the creation of a commission such as this, will assist in greatly reducing the number of innocent Texans wrongfully convicted.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, you need to fill out a card, please, if you have it. Andre Marsh. Anyone else?
You give a card.
In opposition? If not, Andre. Okay. Andre Marsh, you want to come down front?
I'm not registered in testify, but I thought I registered in support.
You're right. It says no testimony. I've just got about 3 things. Andre Ignacy is in support. Texas Fair Defense Project. Ann Merrill is in support, representing herself. Kimberly Taylor is in support, representing herself. Yanez Banks, Texas NAACP, in support. Matt Simpson, ACLU of Texas, in support. Simmons Claude, himself, in support. Travis Leet, in support. The Texas Criminal Justice Coalition. Travis wanted to testify. Come down, you got 3 minutes.
Thank you, members. Travis Lee with the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition. I'll try to be brief. I just wanted to make a few points. One is the argument has been made that these functions already are being performed by other agencies or entities, but I don't believe that that's the case. I think the law schools and those entities right now perform. They take on cases, and it's my understanding that this entity would not take on cases. They seek out and then they write a report based on that particular case. There's no entity currently that is actually looking at systemic problems that is looking at all cases, and not all law schools take on every exoneration case. So this entity would look at all cases across the board, which is a different function. Another one is that these will look at it as sort of a macro level. This is going to be looking not at individual cases, but be looking at all cases across the board, looking at systemic problems. And there is no entity that's doing that currently. The other issue that, and the reason that we support this bill is because we believe that there is still a current need for this kind of entity. We just talked about how successful the Timothy Cole Advisory Panel has been, and it has been, and it has achieved a great deal, and it has legislation that has really improved the system has been implemented because of that. But we're not done, and we don't want to stop there. The reason being is that, yes, we have talked about DNA, and yes, we have talked about eyewitness improvement, but those only represent part of the cases. Those only represent a portion of it. In fact, since 2000, there have been 22 people that have been convicted and exonerated, and not all of those have been DNA. In fact, I think only about 2 or 3, and only I think 2 or 3 have been eyewitness identification problems. So 5 of these people have been sentenced to life, and 1 person sentenced to death row. So we think that problems still exist. We think that the Timothy Cole Advisory Panel, the idea behind it, needs to be a continuation, and we strongly support this bill.
Very good. Any questions? Rodriguez?
So, did I hear you correctly? The innocent projects in the law schools are not doing what this bill would do?
That's my understanding, yes. I mean, it doesn't, they do not, what they do is they take on, is my understanding of how they operate, is they take on cases, they will take on a caseload, and it's varying degrees of that. I mean, I don't know how many cases they actually take on, but they take those on. And then they are under obligation, if they have a success, they will look at that and write a report about that particular case. But they do not take on a macro level approach.
So there is no other entity doing this?
There is not that I am aware of, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
James Buetke. Resource witness in Texas Innocence Defense Commission. Rebecca Bernhardt is Texas Defender Service in support with no testimony. Anyone else for or against committee substitute for House Bill 156?
I'd like to just ask Mr. Buetke 2 questions.
Two questions. Come down.
Come down.
For 2 questions. Not 3, just 2.
Just 2.
State your name, who you represent.
If you just state your name, then I'll ask.
Jim Bethke, Executive Director of the Texas Indigent Defense Commission.
Jim, I know that you, I guess, were you the staffer as you head the Cole panel?
I was the chairman.
You chairman. Can you give us some sense of whether or not that process, how it worked? Was it beneficial? There's a lot of concern about if this is in a lot of ways extending the Cole Commission. And also, that's the first question. How did that work? Another one is, what do these clinics do? Just to go back to the question, what do they do? How do they work as quickly as you can?
First, Senator, on the Cole panel, it was a very thoughtful and deliberative process. All 3 branches of the government were represented, The defense had a representative, prosecutors had a representative, Senator Whitmire served on the Timothy Cole Advisory Panel. It lasted about a year, and I think getting the disparate groups in a bipartisan group together, I think was constructive. The mission was narrowly defined on various legislative initiatives, and then we culminated that in a written report. So I think that exercise of getting different people with different thoughts and perspectives on the justice system was productive. In reference to the Innocence projects, last session, the 4 projects that we fund through the Third Offense account were given the responsibility to do exoneration reports. So if there was an actual exoneration that they worked on, they are responsible to do what this bill would do. However, what isn't being done is if there's an exoneration that wasn't done by one of our 4 public law schools, there's no responsibility on our public law schools to issue a report.
And out of the 110, 120, how many were done by our law schools with the $100,000 they get from the Fair Defense Act, might I add?
I'm not exactly sure, but my estimate, I think it's about 15 or so since 2005. But I'll get the exact number and get back with y'all.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure, Senator Huff.
Does not the Innocence projects at the law school send the reasons for the wrongful convictions to the Task Force on Indigent Defense? They sent a report, or
that's correct.
They do report that.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And did not the commission that you chair, the Timothy Cole Commission, did it not recommend against an Innocence Commission? Am I correct?
It was one area that we were not able to get consensus, and so the commission, we talked, there was one dissenter on the panel that wanted it, but ultimately the recommendation was not to form an Innocence Commission, but to really kind of formalize the process. So I think there was the intermediate step to really get the law schools working together, and we were appreciative to get some administrative support to support that through our organization.
And would you agree that those projects have been successful? I know Senator Ellis wants more money, and I think that's a good idea, but it is working in that it's doing what it was set up to do. And so if this bill were to pass, and it very well may be, and there may be a consensus, I don't know, I'm just laying it out here, but it would be in direct opposition to what your commission recommended, correct? Because this is exactly what they didn't think we needed. Am I correct?
Yeah, I don't know if it's in direct opposition. I think there was some merits to study, kind of the causes and make recommendations. So, but yeah, the TCAP did not recommend the formation of an Innocence Commission.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
If I might, I'm assuming that was a proposal that somebody was making, that you all would endorse the concept of this controversial Innocence Commission. And then you'd have Senator Ellis and Barry Scheck and all of these people from New York who've gotten all these people out of jail in Texas. I just want to lay it out. What was it? It's not as though, it was a very controversial concept from the very beginning when I have advocated it, and I got the idea from the Innocence Project, from Barry Scheck, to be honest with you. So I don't want to make it seem like this was some. So the issue was, are we going to vote to say, we think you ought to establish an Innocence Commission, which I couldn't pass anyway. Hello?
Oh, yeah, so.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
I think you catch my drift.
I got
You used up your 2 questions. A long time ago. Senator Rodriguez.
Yeah. Just as a follow-up to the prior witness's testimony that the law school clinics are not performing the same functions that this bill's proposed entity would perform. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree with that, Senator. They're looking at it in narrow on individual cases of exoneration that they're involved with. They do what this commission would do, and they make a report to the legislature on what the causes were and even make recommendations. But
on the specific case, but not that he testified the macro level, looking broadly at the issues that need to be addressed.
He was 100% correct. There's not a group that's looking at the macro.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Okay, anyone else for or against committee substitute? Somebody slipped in here. We're through. House Bill 166. If not, public testimony is closed. And we'll leave that pending. We have a quorum.